tonight's about fun. Tonight's about having a good time. And I'm also going to try to give you some advice and some practical tips that can really launch you on this journey that you're starting on. But tonight's about fun, so no note-taking. Just enjoy yourself. Now, around my house, in fact, around my life, whenever I have fun, it's usually at my expense. Because I live in a world of women. Every lady, every person I see in the office every day is a female. I come home to a beautiful wife who's very much a female. I've got 2 kids, both girls. Even my cat and my goldfish are female. A few years back, I was in my office at the house, and I was kind of playing on the computer, doing some work, and my daughter at the time was about 7, and she was down the hall playing with one of her friends. And they were just talking and playing. I'm half working and half listening, and I hear one of the friends say, "My daddy is a banker." I kind of got quiet for a second, kind of interested in hearing what my daughter was going to say. And a few seconds goes by, and she says, "Well, my daddy is an obstruction and gynecologist." Great. All that private school education. Even my patients get in on it. Not long ago, I was seeing a new patient in the office for the first time, and I'm always curious, especially when they come from another doctor in town, as to why they changed doctors. Because I didn't want to make the same mistake that they made that ran them off. So I'm always curious, and I asked her. I said, "Ann, why did you change doctors?" And I'm telling you, she looked me straight in the face, deadpan expression, and said, "Dr. Eaker, my other doctor was just too young and good looking." I guess that makes me old and ugly. That makes your bill doing cash, too. Losing weight is easy. Let me prove it to you. How many in here, let me see a show of hands, how many of you have ever lost weight? Gaining weight is easy. Let me see a show of hands of how many people have ever gained weight. All right, we're on a roll now. Let me see a show of hands. How many people cheated on their taxes last year? No, I'm just kidding. What is hard is not gaining weight once you've lost it. And that, as simplistic as it sounds, that's what I'm going to touch on tonight in a roundabout fashion. And we're going to take it that way, but it's going to provide some practical advice on something that is so simple but so hard. And everybody in the room knows what I'm talking about. Now, what is an obstruction and gynecologist doing up here talking about weight management? Why am I an expert? Well, everybody knows what an expert is. That's somebody from another county who knows 100 ways to kiss a girl but doesn't know any girls. Hopefully I'm not that kind of expert. But a few years back, about 15 years now, when I was researching my first book, Holy Hormones, as I was investigating that and learning about the different things related to hormones and midlife, it became real obvious that a big part of that was nutrition and fitness. I realized that midlife, you go through a lot of changes. It's not just hormones. There's a lot of things that happen during that time frame. And one of the most important chapters in that book was about weight management. And it really got me interested in the topic. In fact, I started looking at the number of complaints of people in my office and the main things that they were talking about. And that was one of the top complaints. In fact, it was number 2. The top complaint that I see in the office every day is low libido. I mean, people come in and they say, "My sex drive is driven off and I don't know where it is and I don't have a map." But losing weight is number 2. In fact, my next book, and I've already talked to my editor about this, my next book is going to be Over 50, Fat, Fatigued, and Frigid. Right? I see a lot of heads going, "No, that's good." All right, that's going to cover a lot of territory. But I realized as I began looking at the hormone aspect and looking at midlife and looking at how nutrition and weight management affected that I was really doing a disservice to my own patients. Because either I was a moron or I was insane, because every time a patient would come in and complain about gaining weight, my response was the canned, eat less, exercise more. How many of you have heard that day in and day out? It's a lot more complex than that. Let me tell you right now. It's not the old calories in equals calories out. That's old school. But that's what I was telling folks, and they were coming back the next year 10 pounds heavier. So I realized, like I said, I was a little insane, because you know the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome. But that's what I was doing with folks. So what I did is I took this information from the hormone book, and again, the twist that it kind of had also was it took things from the background of mind, body, and spirit. You know, when you think about something like weight management, or you think about something like hormones, you can't pluck it out and isolate it. You can't separate it. You can't compartmentalize it from the rest of your life. And to be truly healthy, no matter whether it's hormones or whether it's weight management, to truly be healthy, it has to be a balance of mind, body, and spirit, what I call the healing triad. And unless that's embraced, unless you view it from that aspect, I feel you're doomed to failure, because it's like a three-legged stool. You saw off one of those legs and the thing's out of balance and it's not going to stand up. So I started looking at weight management and trying to maintain healthy habits, not only from that mind, body, and spirit approach, but also from the family. And that was what made it a bit unique, because I never could find anything that really looked at how this interacts in the family context. When I look at my own patients, and again, I see all women, and I realized when you look at the studies, almost 70% of health decisions made in the country today are made by the woman in the household. And I realized what an incredible opportunity it was, what an amazing thing it would be for them to be able to take hold of these healthy habits and really influence their family, literally for generations, break those chains that have bound people for generations, and start a new legacy. And that's what really led into the book Healthy Habits for a Fit Family. So I've been doing this kind of stuff for the last 10 or 15 years, really trying to investigate not only on my own, but what everybody else has done. I didn't want to reinvent the wheel. So I spent a lot of time as I was writing this book, really investigating all the different things that are out there with regards to weight management. And let me tell you, I mean, yesterday I Googled weight management. 228 million hits. So I realized there's a lot of stuff out there. I mean, there is a diet for every type of food you can imagine. If it's grown or eaten, there's a diet. You know, I mean, the asparagus diet, the wheat diet, the corn diet, the chips diet, the beer diet, the beer and chips diet. I mean, you know, the Atkins, South Beach, North Beach, Hepzibah diet. I mean, there's everything you can imagine out there. I mean, there's more diets than Madonna has tattoos right now. So you could go out there and spend hours, days, months trying to figure out what's appropriate. One thing I found out very quickly, as I started analyzing these diets and analyzing the ones that worked and that were healthy, two minor criteria that I had, I realized that there were some common threads that ran through each one of these things. Every single approach to weight management that was successful and that was healthy had these common threads, had these things that they all shared that tied them together. And that's what I want to focus on tonight, those three common threads that I found in virtually every one of these. And my challenge is that no matter what approach you take, no matter what program you undertake, you have to incorporate in some fashion these three items or you're not going to be successful. They're that important. I call them the 3 A's: attitude, aptitude, and action. And I want to spend the rest of the evening kind of unpacking those and explaining to you exactly what that means, because I think it's going to serve to launch you into this journey that you're just now beginning. Now, the first A is attitude, and it's that for a reason, because I think so critically important that we get our heads on straight. I have a good friend in Atlanta who's been in the weight management business for 30 years now, and his tagline is, if you don't change your mind, you're not going to change your weight. And it's absolutely true. I want to prove to you the power of the mind. I said we're going to have a little fun tonight. I want to prove to you the power of the mind. And I'm going to use a little audience precipitation. And I need a victim, a volunteer. I need somebody who's going to help me out on a little demonstration. And the one criteria is you have to have a mind. I know that. Look at that. All right, let's give her a hand. Come on, come on. I have disclosure. She is a patient of mine, but this was not pre-planned, I promise. Yeah. I promise. Explain to them, this wasn't pre-planned.
No.
All right. All different cards, would you agree?
Yeah.
All different cards. Not kidding here, all different cards. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to use this simple demonstration to illustrate the power of the mind. To illustrate how you're going to be able to randomly pick a card, any one you want. You're going to be able to think about it. And you're going to be able to think about it so hard, you're going to be able to project the image to these people, and they're going to be able to pick up what card you pick.
Okay.
All right?
Okay.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to riffle through these, shuffle through these, and at any point, just say stop. Anytime you want. Just tell me when. We finished at 7:30.
Okay, stop.
Now, we can keep going, or we can stop right there.
Stop.
You want to stop right there? Okay. I'm only going to show this to her. I want you to remember this card. You got that card?
Yeah.
And I want you to really focus on that card. You're sure you know that card? Because if you forget that card, this is really stupid. Then you got that card. Okay, tattoo that on your brain. I want you to remember that card as best you can. Now I want you to start thinking. No, wait a minute. That would be kind of unfair, wouldn't it? To try to have her think so hard to make you think of that card. I'll call some help. You've seen one of these before, haven't you?
Yeah.
What is this?
An Eaker.
No. This is a piezoelectric defragmentation. This is going to help you project your thoughts to these folks of that card. Now, it's simple to do. You just put it up on your head and you start thinking. All right? Not too difficult. All right, I want you to start now. I want you to put it up there, start thinking very hard. Now, you got to put it against your head there. You can't just transmit through your hand. It has to be right over your head.
Okay, I got it.
We said you had to have a mind, but this is a test. All right, now I want you to start over here. Start projecting over here first. All right, now project over here to these guys. All right, now over here. All right, once more back in the middle. Yeah. All right, now at the count of 3, you can stop now. I know that's fun, but at the count of 3, if anybody had any sense of what her card was, I want you to yell it out. All right? 1, 2, 3. Is that right?
Yes.
The power of the mind. Don't say anything to her, it'll drive her crazy. You know, one of the most, I bet you didn't see that. One of the most powerful illustrations of the power of the mind is the placebo effect. Now, most of you know what the placebo is. It's just an inert substance that, like a sugar pill or colored water, that we give to somebody in a medical test and tell them that it's an active substance. For example, if we were doing a test to see if an antibiotic was effective against, say, strep throat. Well, some of the people in that study we give just sugar water to, or we give them a sugar pill and say that was an antibiotic. And the reason we do that is because in virtually every study, there is a significant response to a placebo. Even in that antibiotic study I just mentioned, some people get better. Even in cancer chemotherapy studies where they have a placebo, a certain percentage of people who use a placebo get better. In PMS studies, almost 40% of people who get the placebo get better. Now, it's not because they're crazy. It's not because they're nuts. It's because the power of their mind is creating physiological changes in their body that actually impact their body functioning. That illustrates the power of the mind. I'll never forget how strong this effect was. About 30 years ago, when I was a medical student, part of our training was to rotate through with some of the older physicians, the private docs in town. Now remember, this was 30 years ago. You can't get away with this now. And this guy was in his 60s. He'd been in practice about 40 years in town. And we're sitting there in the office, and a young lady comes in her mid-30s, and her big complaint was what I just talked about earlier, low libido. And he did a very thorough exam, and he realized that after an exam that most of her problem was above the neck, not below the waist. So he went over to his drawer and pulled out a prescription bottle that had about 25 pills in it. And he said, "Sally, I want you to take these. Some people have gotten a lot of good response from doing this." Well, of course, they were sugar pills. So she takes those, and a couple of weeks go by, and he didn't say anything else about it, and I was a dumb medical student. I just took it for granted that that's the way things were going. And a couple of weeks go by, and we're getting ready to leave the office one day, and this big F-350 truck comes pulling into the back of the office and turns around and backs up. Out gets this big old dude, Marlboro man, like kind of 6'4", about 300 pounds, and cowboy hat and boots, and he comes out with a chaw and spits on the ground and walks around the back. And of course, I'm thinking, we already given the cash for the deposit for the day. And this guy goes up and introduces himself as this young lady's husband. And he sticks out his hand and says, "Doc, I just want to thank you." He said, "I don't know what was in them pills, but I want you to fill the back of this truck up with them." The power of the mind. Your thoughts become your feelings become your actions become your deeds become your habits become your character determines your legacy. What does it start with? It starts with your thoughts. Now, what does that have to do with weight management specifically? Before you leave this room tonight, I want you to begin thinking, if you haven't already, why? Why am I doing this? Why am I here? And I know that sounds kind of silly because most of you are saying, "Well, I'm here because I want the money. I want the extra credit." I saw somebody getting all upset because they weren't sure they were going to get the extra credit. Whatever the reason, you cannot take another step forward to meeting your goal until you know the reason why. And by that I mean something very specific, something very tangible, something very personal. If you don't know the why, you can't take the next step successfully. And that why is going to be different from every one of you. Each one of you is going to have a different reason. It may be, I want to look better, I want to feel better, I want to have more energy, I want to get off my diabetic medicine, I want to win the money, my wife made me, my husband made me. Whatever the reason, you've got to get that reason, but more importantly, you've got to put some emotion behind that. What do I mean by that? It's not just a cognitive understanding. We all have those things. How many of you remember when you learned how to add fractions? Yeah, one person. You're weird. That's strange. But you're sweet. But you're weird. Because that's a cognitive thing. There's no emotion to you attached to that. But how many of you remember exactly where you were on 9/11? Everybody in this room probably to some degree. because the emotion that was attached with that experience. So when you think about the why, think about what impact that's going to have on your life. Attach that emotion to it. If it's to be healthier, think about the things that you can accomplish if you're healthier. I remember one lady came in the office a while back, and she had been a smoker for 20 years, and she came in and said, a month ago, I stopped smoking. I just put them down. And I said, what was it that made you do that? And she said, one morning I was sitting at the breakfast table with my granddaughter, and I took out a cigarette, and my granddaughter said, Granny, you know, if you keep that up, you're not going to be around for my wedding. That stopped it. Right there. That's what it took. Because she felt that emotion. She knew she shouldn't smoke, but she understood the emotional heartstrings that were just being ripped out. And think of the negative emotions. People don't realize that negative emotions are almost as much a motivator as positive emotions. Feel the pain if you don't do what you wanted to do. Feel the pain if you don't get to that healthy state. Really feel it. Really understand that, because that's what's going to cement it. That's what's going to drive it. Your attitude, your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions are amazingly powerful. And for weight management, it all starts with the reason why. Viktor Frankl, many of you have read his book, Man's Search for Meaning. He was a psychiatrist who was interned in one of the Nazi death camps during the World War II. Wrote a fabulous book, and he talks in that book about purpose. That was the one thing he noticed that made a difference in people's lives, in people who survived the Nazi death camps and those that didn't. The one factor that made a difference was the people who survived had a purpose. They had a reason. They understood the why. It's that powerful. So my challenge, one of the many I'm going to give you tonight, is to understand your personal why. And make sure it's something you write down. There's something special about writing things down that makes a difference. I remember the story about a lady who was a little bit crazy. She thought she was dead. Obviously, that would qualify as crazy. Her family was absolutely exacerbated. So they'd taken her to psychiatrist after psychiatrist, but she just maintained, I'm dead. And finally, they took her to this new young whippersnapper psychiatrist in town, and he said, okay, I'm gonna take a little different tack with her, because obviously what's been going on hasn't worked. So he takes out his Grey's Anatomy text. That was a book before it was a television show. And took out the text and just talked to her about the circulatory system, about how the heart pumps blood and blood circulates and it travels all around the body, and people who are alive have blood flowing through their veins, and dead people don't. And he said, well, do you understand that? And she said, yeah, that makes sense to me. So he takes out a little pin, pricks her finger, and she bleeds. And he thought, I've got her now. And he goes, well, what do you think about that? She looks at him and goes, dead people do bleed. That was her reality. That was her thoughts. That was her mind. She was convinced that that was real. What we think becomes our reality. Know your why. You know, one of the greatest barriers to positive thinking, and again, don't mishear me. I don't want you to mishear that I'm saying that you can think your way to adequate weight management or health or healthy lifestyles. You know, all the positive thinking in the world won't get you there without the other two A's. But I'm sure it's going to get you a lot farther than the negative thinking. But don't mishear what I'm saying. Don't be like, these always remind me of stories when I start thinking of these things. I heard this old fellow, 65 years old, came walking into his office, in his doctor's office, and he was in great shape, except he was a little hard of hearing. And went through his exam, and the doctor gave him some advice and sent him on his way. And then next day, doctor's walking down to the cafe for lunch, and this old fella, he spies him down the block, and he's walking towards him, and he's got this beautiful 20-year-old girl on his arm, and he's just strutting down the road, just looking as happy as he could be, and the doctor walks over to him and said, "Sam, what are you doing?" He said, "Doc, I'm just doing what you told me to do in the office the other day. You told me to get a hot mama and be cheerful." And the doc said, "No, I said you got a heart murmur, be careful." So don't mishear what I'm saying. I'm not saying you can think your way to wellness. You can't think your way to wellness, but what you can do is you can establish the why, which allows you to take the next step. And that's the how. A is for aptitude. You know, people will spend more time shopping for their big screen TV than they will learning about how their body works. Think about the amount of time that you put in that background check on your daughter's boyfriend. If you put that much time into learning about some very basic facts of physiology, let's face it, you've got to get yourself out of that victim mentality, and the only way to do that is to be a partner in this journey. And part of that is responsibility by educating yourself about successful ways that you can accomplish the goals that you want to accomplish. Now, the pitfall is looking out there and seeing those 228 million hits on weight management and wondering, what do I do? And I know that's frustrating. It's frustrating as a physician trying to cut through all the craziness that we are exposed to and trying to determine what's legitimate and what's not. Here's a couple of criteria that you can use to analyze any, and I don't even like to use the word diet. I don't know why anybody would want to use a word that starts D-I-E. So I don't even want to look at that term. But any program that you're going to utilize, anything that you're going to use to help you along this journey has to meet two criteria, or you're fooling yourself, or worse yet, you're harming yourself. Number one, it has to be scientifically valid. I'm so sick of seeing all the garbage out there. I go crazy. I can't even watch television anymore because of all the infomercials about weight management, about losing weight, about sit on your couch and watch TV while you're burning fat. Garbage! It's crazy. If you're looking at a program and the only support it has is testimonials from celebrities, go somewhere else. There's so much else out there that's available that has tremendous amount of scientific studies that back it up. You've got to look for the resources. And again, this is not easy. Again, I spent a long time when I was researching my Healthy Habits book, cutting through a lot of the garbage. So I know it takes some effort, but it's worth the effort. If you find something that you think is worth your while, if it passes the smell test, if it sounds reasonably logical, then look for some data, look for some information. I mean, that's the downfall of the internet is the 228 million hits. The upside of the internet is you can find a lot of good stuff there too. Use it as a research tool. Find the scientific studies to back up what you're doing, whether it's low fat, low carb, high fat, beer and cheese, whatever approach you're going to take. Research the information. See if it's scientifically valid. Don't take testimonials. If it worked for Aunt Sally, it's got to work for you. No. One thing I've learned is for however many people are in this room, there's that exact same number of right ways of doing it. It's individualized. You can't cookbook any of this stuff. You have to find your path, and that takes effort. But it's a necessary effort that will pay dividends long beyond just these few weeks. Second criteria is it has to be healthy for the long term. You have to begin viewing this journey as one that's going to be the first step in the rest of your life. This is not a temporary fix. This is not just a 12-week or a 14-week program. This is a lifestyle. If you start to look at it from that perspective, at whatever you're doing can meet the criteria of, if I'm still doing this 6 months, 9 months, 5 years from now, am I going to be healthy? It's a good program. But if you're looking for that crash, I mean, listen, you can go out and do coffee enemas twice a week and you're going to lose weight, but you're also going to ruin your marriage. And that's not healthy. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there, but if it'll meet those two criteria, is it scientifically valid and is it healthy for the long term? You're going to be surprised at how many things you're going to eliminate right off the bat. And it's well worth taking the time to do that. You've got to be a critical consumer. I don't have to tell anybody out there this is $1 billion market. And you are going to be, if you haven't already been, and most of you have, lambasted with information. And you have to take it upon yourself to take that responsibility to search it out. Because you're not going to get any help from Madison Avenue. I mean, they are brilliant at this stuff. Remember years ago, what was the buzzword? Light. Everything was light. I mean, there was light dog food, light beer, there was light bulbs. I mean, there was light everything. And nobody knew what light meant. We still don't know what light meant. The government tried to come in and say this is what light meant, but we still don't know what that means. Now the buzzword is natural. Huh? Everything's natural. Nobody knows what that means. I mean, cow poop is natural, but you're not going to eat it. Now, the beer companies are really smart. They've got natural light. Right? So you've got to be a critical consumer. You've got to take that responsibility. Get your head on straight with the why. Get the right attitude with the how. The third A, action. If you're satisfied where you are, if you're happy where you are, then don't do anything. But the only way to make a difference from your current situation is to change. Revelation. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. If you don't take action, status quo is going to be the continuation. You know, I said before, knowledge is power. No. It's the application of knowledge that's power. You can have the best attitude in the world. You can know every fact. You can know everything you need to know about weight management. But if you don't do something about it, it's worthless. And I'm proud of every one of you here tonight because you're taking action by simply being here. By simply declaring that I'm going to make a change. I'm going to do something different that's going to impact not only me, but my entire family. You would be amazed whether your family is the team or whether your family's standing back and saying, I'm going to see how this works out. But you are going to impact family, friends, people that you don't even know are going to see the change that's going to happen with you. And that's going to be motivational for them. So the action that you're taking is like the pebble in the pond. It's going to send out waves. And it'll have consequences that you never even anticipated. But you've got to take that action. You've got to take that first step. And it doesn't have to be a big action. Talking specifically about nutrition. Don't change everything you do overnight. That's crazy. That's a setup for failure. Don't do that. Make one little small change and stick with that for a week. Then make another small change and stick with that. Baby steps. That's the key to success. When I first ran my first marathon, I was pretty daunted. I was thinking, you know, the farthest I've ever run at once is 6 miles. And you're talking about 26.2. And I had a real wise guy who was, not a wise guy, real wise, man who was my mentor, and he looked at me one day and said, Ron, basically that's just 4 6-mile races. Break it down into small increments. It helps the way you think about this. What's one of the keys for you as far as taking action in weight management? Setting goals. Setting goals. Setting goals as an individual. Setting goals as a team. And make those goals real. Write them down. Make them as specific as possible. It's not, I want to lose weight. That's not a goal. I want to lose 10 pounds by February 12th, and I want 8 of those pounds to be fat. That's a goal. So set very specific goals. Follow those. Track it. Make sure you're following those goals. Make sure that the decisions you make are getting you closer to those goals. And then reward yourself. Give yourself little bonuses along the way when you reach those goals. It helps propel you towards action. But if you're satisfied at where you are, don't change. Don't be that like that lady who joined the health spa. She was all mad after about 6 months because she didn't lose any weight at all. Apparently, you got to show up. She just got it over here. You know, one of the biggest inhibitors of taking action is fear. False expectations appearing real. F-E-A-R. You know, there's some things really to be afraid of. I'm definitely afraid of big dogs. I've been bitten a number of times out running. That's why I don't like big dogs. But I'm not afraid of bananas. That would be kind of an irrational fear. Fear of change. Fear of success. We often hear fear of failure. I hear fear of success is almost as big a problem for some people. Fear of how others are going to react to the change in your lifestyle. I know there are a lot of relationships out there that are codependent on the status quo. You got to think about these things. That can be a tremendous inhibitor of action. The second part of action is this little pill. I've got a pill here. Now again, I'm asking you for a show of hands. This little pill will make you lose weight, look better, feel better, act better, decrease your risk of prostate cancer 50%, decrease your risk of breast cancer 45%, and it doesn't cost anything. How many people want to take this pill? Everybody got the rest of you are lying. This pill is called exercise. And it just takes 30 minutes to swallow. Yeah. Exercise is the fountain of youth. And I can tell you, unquestionably, if you are on a program to lose weight and it doesn't involve some form of exercise, whether that's sitting in a chair doing this or walking or training for a marathon, if it doesn't have some form of exercise, A, it's not sustainable, and B, it's not healthy. Bottom line, get over it. It's the way it's going to be, and it's going to make you feel better, look better, act better. I was serious. It reduces your incidence of breast cancer almost 45%, prostate cancer 50%. And I'm not talking about training for a marathon. I'm talking about 30 minutes a week, 30 minutes a day, 3 times a week minimum, ideally every day. There's not a weight management program worth its salt that doesn't incorporate exercise in some form or fashion. And anybody can do it. There was a study not long ago on 90-year-old men, and they literally had them in the gym doing what little they could do. But virtually every parameter that they measured improved even at that stage. The only limitations are up here. Now we got a couple of minutes, and I want to expand real quickly on the exercise component and give you, I want to just be practical, because I want to give you the 4 quickest ways to get fit the fastest. Walk, W-A-L-K. Easy way to remember it. The W stands for wind sprints. Now that's not going out and doing like we did in high school, run as fast as you could for 100 yards and then throw up. That's not what this is. That might work for some of you, but that's not what this is about. For those of you who are walkers, and I'm going to take fabulous exercise. For those of you who are walkers, next time you're out on a walk, about every 5 minutes, pick up your pace, noticeably pick up your pace for about 20-25 seconds. And then go back to your regular pace. Then the next 5 minutes, do the same thing again for about 15-20 seconds. Studies have shown that you can burn almost 20% more calories with that single simple change in your routine. It's worth it. It's one of the quickest ways to get fitter faster. The A is aerobic. What does aerobic mean? It means exercising so you're not out of breath. Fat is burned in muscles. That's the only place you can get rid of fat. I don't care how much cellophane you wrap around your legs. I don't care how many pills that you sit there and eat while watching The View. You're not going to get fat gone that way. There's only one metabolic way to get rid of fat, and that's to be burned up in the muscles. Those are your better butter burners. And to do that, you have to have oxygen. Fat will not burn up without oxygen. So if you're out exercising and you're not burning fat, you're drawing a crowd, but you're not burning fat. So if you're out walking, one way to judge whether you're in an aerobic fashion is just check your heart rate. You don't need one of those fancy, I love these, where you have these fancy things to measure your pulse. Do this for 6 seconds and multiply by 10. Most of you can do that. You don't need the 600 iFit or WeFit or whatever that stuff is. I mean, they're great, but you don't need them. And as long as you can carry on a conversation, if you're not out of breath, but your heart rate's elevated, you're in that aerobic fashion. That's where you're burning the fat. Because the oxygen gets in the muscles burn the fat, and the fat goes away. The L is for weightlift. And that basically means building that furnace that we stoke. Again, it's the muscles that burn the fat. If you don't have any muscles, it's really hard to burn the fat. And we found in our own practice, where we do body composition analysis, there's a tremendous variation between people genetically and how much their muscle mass is and how much it's not. So if somebody comes in and they have a genetically low muscle mass, part of their exercise regimen is going to be weightlifting, because we want to build some of that muscle. Now, we're not going to make you all Arnold Schwarzenegger women. You're not going to get muscle bound from doing weightlifting, but what you are doing is you are going to build those muscle fibers, which are going to in turn burn more fat. And the K is really a C. Doctors can't spell. It stands for cross training. If all you do all day long and every exercise you do is walking, or if you're a big swimmer and all you do is swimmer, or if you're a fool like me and all you do is run, you're going to be much better off swapping around exercises. Don't always walk. Ride a bike sometimes, swim sometimes, weightlift sometimes. The body is phenomenal at its ability to adapt. If all you do is one thing, the body will become so used to it, it's like, oh, she's walking again. And nothing really happens. Or at least it doesn't happen as well as it did when you first started. But if you throw some bike in there, it's going, what is she doing now? This is crazy! And it changes its metabolism. It throws it out of whack, and you get the results a lot more. It's one of the quickest ways to get off a plateau. If you hit a plateau and you're doing the same thing, swap it up, and you'll bust through that plateau in many cases. Cross-train. Let me close with a story, and then hopefully we'll have a few minutes. I don't even know, are we okay with time?
7:22.
Oh, we're doing good. We've got 35 seconds for questions. We'll close. reservation there. We'll close with a brief story. As I mentioned, I run marathons, and I was in Knoxville running a marathon about 2 or 3 years ago. And one of the things I like to do when I run, because I get kind of bored after a while, is about mile 15 or 16, I start thinking of little games to play to try to keep my mind off what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And one of the things I do is I look out ahead and I pick either the oldest or the biggest person I can see ahead of me, and I try to catch him. So I'm up in Knoxville, and it's about mile 18 or so, and I look up, and about 50 yards ahead of me, I see the biggest rear end I've ever seen in my life. I mean, this is like 2 burlap sacks with squirrels running around in here. Now notice, I'm not making fun of them because they're ahead of me. Right? So either they're really fast or I'm really slow. But I say, all right, I'm going to catch that dude. That's what I'm going after. So I start going up, and it's like he had eyes in the back of these burlap sacks. Because every time I get close, he'd kind of move a little faster ahead of me. It was almost like those magnets, you know, that repel when you... So I'm coming up, and he's going for it. I'm coming up, he's going for it. Finally, I just gave up. Couldn't do it. So I get to the end of the race, and I go over, and you know, they all have all these big snack tables there. You know, I see him over there. He's probably been there 10 minutes ahead of me. Well, that night I went to a banquet, the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society banquet. Usually when I run, I try to run for a charity to add some motivation to the race. And we're sitting at this banquet eating dinner, and I look up, and the keynote speaker's walking out. It's Mr. Big Butt. And this guy starts telling his story. He lost 110 pounds training for this race. He raised $54,000 for the Leukemia Society. And his talk was phenomenal. The motivating effect that it had on that audience was incredible. But he said one thing that stuck with me. He said, it wasn't courage for me to finish this race. What took courage was for me to step out that door the very first day I started training. That took courage. You're taking the first step tonight. Some of you maybe already have taken that first step. That's courage. Know the why, know the how, put it into action. And each one of you is going to start a new life that's going to have an impact today, tomorrow, and possibly for generations. Thank you very much.